Steel Dragon 2000 in Nagashima Spa Land is a colossal Giga coaster. It is the tallest and fastest roller coaster in all of Japan. It is also the world's longest roller coaster, as of this recording. Unlike the Giga coasters in the United States that are built by Bolliger Mabillard or Intamin, this one was built by Morgan, so it feels quite different. And if you get lucky where you sit, you can make a strong argument this may actually be the best Giga coaster out there. I will explain why in this review. In July 1999, Cedar Point announced Millennium Force. This would open in 2000 as the world's tallest and fastest full-circuit roller coaster. It would be the first Giga coaster, or full-circuit coaster to eclipse the 300-foot or 91-meter tall barrier. In November 1999, Nagashima Spa Land in Japan announced an even larger Giga coaster in Steel Dragon 2000. 2000 was the year of the dragon on the Chinese calendar, hence the ride's name. The ride would be slightly taller than Millennium Force at 318 feet, or 97 meters tall, and subsequently, it would be a bit faster, hitting speeds of 95 miles per hour, or 153 kilometers per hour. It would also claim the length record, as it featured a whopping 8,133 feet, or 2,479 meters of track. Millennium Force opened in May of 2000, allowing it to briefly claim the height and speed records, but these records were snatched by Steel Dragon when it opened just 3 months later. These records would not last long though. Japan's very own Fuji-Q Highland opened Dodonpa in December 2001, which took the speed record. This ride featured the most intense launch of any roller coaster, as it accelerated riders to 107 miles per hour, or 172 kilometers per hour, in just 1.6 seconds. This coaster closed in 2021 after multiple riders sustained injuries, which is why Steel Dragon is once again the country's fastest coaster. While there are a few launch coasters out there that are faster, it is tied with Fury 325 at Carowinds for the fastest roller coaster out there using a chain lift. Steel Dragon lost the worldwide height record to Cedar Point's Top Thrill Dragster in 2003, and as of this recording, is the 4th tallest roller coaster out there, and is the longest traditional coaster. The only coasters longer as of this recording are a select few mountain coasters. That being said, all of these records will be shattered by Falcon's flight at Six Flags Qiddiya when that opens later this year. Steel Dragon was built by Morgan Manufacturing, a company best known for a trio of hypercoasters at the Cedar Fair parks, Wild Thing at Valley Fair, Steel Force at Dorney Park, and Mamba at Worlds of Fun. In many ways, Steel Dragon looks like a larger version of these rides. Heck, it even has the exact same paint scheme Mamba used to use and what Steel Force currently uses. Steel Dragon has red track and white supports. But more notably, the layout has the exact same sequence of elements. There's a large drop and a big camelback on the outward leg. This leads to a twisted turnaround section. Then they all feature a return run with a long series of bunny hills. Steel Dragon really just feels like your traditional hypercoaster layout, just 50% larger. This makes it quite a bit different than Intamin's Giga coasters that focus primarily on low turns to emphasize the speed. Even the B&M Gigas execute their layouts differently than the company's hypercoasters, which differentiate themselves a bit more. Steel Dragon dominates Nagashima's skyline. You can see this coaster for miles as you approach the park, and it has quite the presence up close as well. The whole layout is visible from the parking lot, and that outward leg can be seen from anywhere within the park. Not only is this coaster tall, but it's also beefy. Due to Japan's earthquake regulations, this coaster required more steel than the other Giga coasters out there. That's the main reason this coaster cost 7 billion yen, or $48.5 million US back in 2000. With inflation, it would cost nearly double that price to build the equivalent ride today. This coaster's entrance is located towards the back of the park. The entry sign is quite iconic if you grew up watching the Discovery Channel or the Travel Channel coaster specials. It is simple, but it bears the ride's name in large text. and the midway leading up to it features an impressive dragon painting on the ground. That's the only bit of theming you'll find though. The queue is an endless series of switchbacks. I shudder to think how many people these could hold if they were ever full. They are covered at least, but there's absolutely nothing to see. This is not a line you want to get stuck in, but unfortunately, this coaster usually has a lengthy wait. That is because it has awful capacity. This coaster has enough block zones to safely operate 3 to 4 trains. I think they own 3 trains nowadays, but I don't know for sure. From the reports of others I've seen, 2 train operation seems to be the most they'll do nowadays. This is most common on weekends. All my visits have taken place on weekdays when there's been just 1 train in use. That is especially painful here because a full cycle start to finish takes nearly 5 minutes. The lift alone takes almost 1.5 minutes. Then the ride is 1.5 minutes of prime ride time. Then it takes 1 minute to clear the final brake run, and most painstakingly, another 1 minute to make its way through the station and fully park. This is because the train stops at least a dozen times, inching forwards ever so slowly. Running 1 train on a coaster this long is bad enough, but the poor programming on the return to the station is excruciating to watch. This causes a significant delay in loading, even when this coaster runs 2 trains. I would love if this park would invest some money to rectify this in the future. Making matters worse is the loading procedure. This coaster strictly loads front to back, no exceptions. Your seat is assigned by a grouper at the end of the queue. Even if a row behind you is empty, you cannot sit there. Likewise, you cannot request a row or wait an extra cycle for a different row. Groups are not paired together as well, so even if you're a single rider and there's a spot open elsewhere on the train, you will get your own row. This means there will be a lot of empty seats each cycle, further reducing the already poor throughput. Absolutely nothing can ride with you. All your pockets must be empty. On top of that, you cannot wear glasses even if they're secured by a strap. Everything must then go in your own bag or a basket they'll provide you. The employee who assigns you a row will also wand you with a metal detector. They usually will do this while the prior train is cycling, but not always. When it's your turn to ride, you must cross the load platform and store everything in a locker. The park typically waits for the prior riders to leave the platform before admitting the next riders, adding more time to each dispatch. It is only at this point you can finally go to your seat. The restraint check itself does not take too long. It is everything leading up to it. On my most recent visit, the coaster would cycle approximately every 10 minutes. This meant it was averaging less than 200 riders per hour, which is putrid for any coaster, especially one that is this popular. As a result, this queue can hit the 45 to 60 minute mark even on quiet days. It can climb even higher on particularly busy days. Some additional touring notes that will impact how you experience this coaster. This coaster, like many at Nagashima Spa Land, does not operate in rain. The park is so conservative that they will close the queue if they see rain approaching the park, even if it has not even reached the park yet. They do this in an attempt to avoid having to turn guests away already in line. Therefore, I simply recommend avoiding this park on days with precipitation in the forecast if at all possible. On a related note, Steel Dragon will not operate in high winds. I do not know the exact speed that causes it to close for sure, but I've seen it down when ground winds are as low as 15 miles per hour, so try to visit on a day with little to no wind. Then this coaster also closes for a daily inspection in the early afternoon. In 2003, this ride had an accident where an axle sheared and a wheel struck 2 guests. Japan takes accidents very seriously, so much so that this coaster was kept closed for 3 years for an investigation. I believe the inspection may have been a clause to get the coaster reopened. This typically takes place at 2 p.m. and it takes roughly 30 minutes. The coaster usually reopens unless a maintenance issue is noticed. The final thing to note is that this park closes queues early. This ensures the last train goes out right before the midday inspection and before the park closes. Having said all that, what are the best ways to avoid a long wait with this coaster? First, you can head here immediately after the park opens. This only works if you're towards the front of the rope drop crowd though, because many guests make this their first stop. The other advantage to heading here early is that you can potentially influence your seat. If you're the very first person in line, you get that coveted front row. Or if you're not the very first person over there, you can count how many groups are ahead of you to try and be placed towards the front or back. Remember, people from different groups will not be paired together. 2. Ride this coaster immediately after the daily inspection. It is typically a half hour from 2 to 2:30 p.m. We were able to use this to our advantage to get the front row. We started queuing outside the entrance at 2 p.m., so we would be the first ones in line when it reopened. This guaranteed us the front row. Well worth a 30-minute wait in my opinion. 3. Purchase a priority pass. These are only sold at a vending machine at the base of the ride's lift hill. These cost 1,000 yen, or $7 per person per ride. These machines are cash only. Same with the kiosks for the park's restaurants. So plan accordingly how much cash you bring to this park. Depending on the time slot you book, you have a 20 to 60 minute window to return to the ride. They only start selling them when the queue is greater than 30 minutes, but that occurs most days. Times can run out and the park will stop selling them whenever the queue closes. These are major time savers. They bypass the switchbacks, so you often board in 1 or 2 trains. You also tend to get better seats. From experience, the attendant would admit 20 to 25 people from the main standby queue. Then, they would admit those with priority passes. This meant you would usually get the front or back car, depending on the group sizes ahead of you. The forces feel fairly similar in the turnaround section and return run, regardless of where you're sitting. But you need to be in the front or back cars to maximize the outward leg. I think the very front row easily offers the best overall experience because you feel every bit of this coaster's impressive top speed. Originally, Steel Dragon utilized Morgan trains similar to their other hypers. These were large and boxy, but they sat a lot of people. Each train sat up to 36 riders, as there were 6 cars, each with 3 rows of 2. In 2013, the park hired B&M to provide new trains. These are similar to the ones on the company's hypercoasters. They seat 4 riders per car as usual, except each car is 2 rows of 2, rather than seating guests 4 across. This is because Steel Dragon uses a narrower track gauge than the B&M hypers. I think the newer trains offer superior ride experience because they're far more open. This makes the ride feel more intense because you feel the speed more. However, the trains came with 3 drawbacks. 1. They seat 8 less riders. Each train holds 28 riders max, as the new trains have just 7 cars. 2. The coaster now has a more restrictive height requirement. The minimum height increased from 130 centimeters or 51 inches to 140 centimeters or 55 inches. There also now is a stated maximum height of 185 centimeters or 73 inches. I have visited this park with a few friends around that mark, but none were checked. So unless you're way over the max, it doesn't seem like you'll have much of an issue getting on this ride. 3. The restraints are more restrictive. Morgan trains are extremely accommodating. Steel Dragon has the standard B&M clamshell restraints. There is a seatbelt as well, but it does not impact the ride experience in my opinion. The clamshells are super comfortable as you'd expect, but the Verify here requires one more click than usual. I have seen this in Shambhala at Port Aventura and Candymonium at Hershey Park as well. Just keep that in mind if you have larger thighs and already struggle with a lot of B&M hyper trains. It is worth noting there are shin guards unlike the other B&M hypers, but there's quite a bit of clearance with your legs, even if you're on the taller side. So unless you try to kick your legs out, you probably won't even notice them. I know some have speculated whether these trains could be added to other Morgan hypers, but it's worth noting that Steel Dragon's track is set up differently. Morgan usually places their guide wheels on the inside of the track. They were placed on the outside in Steel Dragon, meaning these trains could not be used exactly as is in the other coasters. I'm not sure why this was done, but it can be seen clearly when looking at photos comparing the two rides. Once checked, you have a small dip out of the station, and the train will get caught by the brakes for a moment, another example of poor programming. You then turn right. You then ascend the ginormous lift hill. I already mentioned this thing's height and duration, but another notable feature is that it has two separate lift chains. You switch between the two halfway up. It's pretty weird to see. When this coaster was built 25 years ago, it was not feasible to use one single chain for the entire climb. It would have been too heavy. For comparison, Intamin used a cable lift on Millennium Force, and they use the same technology in their other Giga coaster in Pantherian at King's Dominion. Years after Steel Dragon opened, B&M was successfully able to use one lift chain on its Giga coasters. This was possible with advancements in motor technology and because those rides had steeper lift hills than Steel Dragon, meaning the chain could be shorter. The climb on Steel Dragon offers breathtaking views. You can see all the park's rides, and Nagashima has a picturesque location on the water as well. Once at the top, you crest a massive first drop. This hits a max angle of 68 degrees. This is quite a bit shallower than the other Giga coasters, which are all near vertical. Steel Dragon's drop feels like a supersized version of your standard Morgan Hyper drop. While not as good as those other Giga coasters, the drop is still good. Those in the back cars get solid floater airtime. It is just even more sustained than the usual Morgan Hyper due to the added height. Up front, you'll levitate a bit, but the negative Gs are far milder. The pullout then offers very strong positive Gs for all. You are pinned into your seat. There also is a noticeable shake here. Fortunately, the rest of the coaster is extremely smooth, so the shaking here is not a major issue for me. The train then navigates a 252-foot, or 77-meter tall camelback. That is huge. Just to put this hill's crazy scale into perspective, this element alone is taller than all but 11 coasters out there. That is absurd. This hill offers good and very sustained floater on the ends of the train. It is not as prolonged or powerful in the middle seats, but it's still decent. The pullout once again offers nice positive Gs. On my initial visit to the park, this jackhammered pretty severely, but it was not an issue in my most recent visit, so maybe they did some work here. Next is another hypersized hill. The entry is a straight climb, so those in front get solid floater over the top. The descent is a large swooping drop, so those in back instead experience weak floater. This leads to the turnaround section, which is all about positive Gs and speed. This section is the main reason I think this coaster is a front row ride. Your eyes will be watering from the sustained speed here. That swooping drop offers the ride's best positive Gs in the pullout. They are great in the front and even stronger in the back. I routinely gray out here. This is followed by an angled helix. It is brisk and the Gs are maintained through it. I think the positives are stronger in the front this time around, since you're pushed into the turn. Then comes yet another helix. This one is fast and equally as forceful in all rows, as everyone is treated good positive Gs. The low turn coming out of it feels especially intense up front, as the train holds its speed through the entirety. This leads to this elongated bunny hump that unfortunately has no air, but it's over quickly so it doesn't disrupt the pacing. Then there's a leftward turn through a sea of supports. There are some pretty scary head choppers here in this part of the ride. You then rise into the mid-course brake run, getting some minor airtime in the front. A few Morgans are known for deafeningly and harshly trimming the return run. The trims here only take away a little speed, which sets up a fantastic return run. The drop off the mid-course offers the most forceful burst of airtime on the ride. Even in the front rows, you get a decent and abrupt pop of airtime. but in that back car, it is a particularly potent pop. This is followed by 6 consecutive bunny hills, 2 of which are in tunnels. Picture the return run on Magnum XL 200, except replace the thigh-crushing ejector airtime with great floater airtime. It may even hit the flagector territory in some rows. It is blissful how much time you spend out of your seat here. It is the best finale of any Giga coaster without a doubt in my opinion. 2 additional notes about this section. 1. The first tunnel is absurdly hot. Even when you visit on a spring day, this tunnel feels like a furnace. I'm not sure why that is. 2nd, the landings in the back car are a little harder than the other rows due to the train dynamics. They are not as bad as the ones on Steel Eel at SeaWorld San Antonio, but your rump will feel it when you're thrown down each valley. You then jump into the brake run, getting one last burst of airtime in front. You then loudly decelerate, but you still have 2 more minutes of ride time. The train takes its sweet time returning to the station. You travel through the brake run slowly, and then you stop at least a dozen times as you go through the station, if not more. Every time you stop along the way, the air released from the braking system sounds like a fart, so the child in me chuckled a bit. You eventually park in the station, ending the extremely long and enjoyable experience. I already touched on the smoothness, but what about the pacing? Steel Dragon is great in this department. Considering the sheer length of this ride, it wouldn't be surprising if there was a part that dragged out a bit. Alas, this ride is engaging start to finish. The only chance to catch your breath is the mid-course brake run, but again, you are not there for long because you're barely trimmed. What would I rate Steel Dragon 2000? I would give this Giga coaster a 9 out of 10. This is an excellent coaster that really grew on me after my recent rides. This is a very well-rounded experience. It is fast-paced despite its absurd length. It has plenty of airtime. The outward leg offers super sustained airtime, particularly if you're on the ends of the train. Then the returning bunny hills are a buffet of strong floater airtime for all. Then the pullouts and turnaround section offer high speed and positive Gs to juxtapose those negative Gs. If you're fortunate enough to get a front row ride, this may be the best experience of any Giga coaster. Yes, I may even prefer to Fury in that seat. This ride is nearly perfect up there. Feeling the full speed with those forces is incredible. No other Giga coaster offers more prime ride time or a larger quantity of airtime. I just can't rate this coaster higher than a 9 because there's no way to guarantee a front row ride and the experience does fall off a bit in the middle rows. It is still a great ride there, but not otherworldly. Nagashima Spa Land has an incredible top 2 with this and Hakuge, which is why this park needs to be on every coaster enthusiast's bucket list. You will not be disappointed visiting this park. Those are my thoughts on Steel Dragon 2000, the Morgan Giga coaster at Nagashima Spa Land. What are your thoughts about this ride? Do you think it could be the best Giga coaster? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I would appreciate it if you gave this video a like, and you consider subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.